All right, hi folks. So thank you for attending the eSign 101 session, and let's get started. So I'm Joey Pang. I'm the lead product manager for the eSignature platform team here. Excited to share with you the top eSignature features and how to take advantage of them in your application via our APIs. So let's quickly go over the agenda first. Oh, actually, give me 1 second. Looks like it is muted. Okay, let's continue. So let's quickly go over the agenda first. This is one of 2 sessions that I'll be doing for the eSignature basics. An eSign 101 session, which is this session, will give an overview of the DocuSign eSignature REST API. Then we'll spend the majority of the time diving into the most common features of eSign and how to take advantage of it in your applications. Along the way, we'll also talk a little bit about the different types of integrations you can build using DocuSign. For each feature we talk about, I'll give a demo along with the API example so that developers in the audience can get a feel for how it's done. Towards the end, we'll wrap up and leave some time for Q&A. So first, let's talk about DocuSign's APIs a little bit. DocuSign, first and foremost, is an API-first company. Every single one of our applications, whether it's our mobile app or web app, utilizes the public APIs that are available to you today. That means every single feature you see online or in our web application, you can use with your integration. 60% of our transactions all occur through our APIs directly. The eSignature API itself contains about 450 endpoints, which is to say that if you want to build a simple application, you can. But if you had a complex workflow, we can support it as well. One of the greatest things about DocuSign is that we fully support embedding of functionality. If you have a signature process that you want to digitize in your application, you can fully embed DocuSign's experience end to end. This allows you to build rich applications and keep your users within your own application so that your users never have to change context. We have a suite of capabilities to make embedding of DocuSign seamless. One of the things we're very proud of is recently we got the award from API World. Every year, API World announces their annual awards for best APIs. The categories are broad across all types of development tools, from business APIs to automotive APIs. DocuSign eSignature was nominated and won for the best business software API for 2021. DocuSign's eSignature REST API has won numerous awards over the years. In fact, we've won this very award back in 2019 as well. This is a reflection of just how powerful our eSignature solution is for helping organizations on their digital transformation journey. And today, we'll show you exactly how your organization can utilize the eSignature REST API to do the same. Here's a snapshot of just some of our customers across different industries that are using DocuSign's APIs. Some of these customers have just one use case. Some have hundreds. These companies have implemented an extremely broad set of use cases. There are ones that have implemented high volume B2C retail scenarios. Some use us for business loan applications, insurance claims, onboarding new employees, procurement, everything you can imagine. A growing number of these organizations are based outside of the United States. In fact, 36% of our traffic to the developer center is from outside the US. However, it's not just for building, DocuSign is not just for companies building solutions for themselves though. We also know that many of our customers, like some of you on the call here, have a variety of business applications that are being used. Your employees are already accustomed to using standard business applications every day, whether it's a CRM system, HR, procurement, legal, or any other general productivity and collaboration suite. That's where our ISV and partner network comes in. These developers have enhanced and built more than 350 integrations that enable customers to benefit from eSignature functionality from within the system that they work in every day. Some notable callouts are like Slack, Oracle, SAP, the Google and Microsoft ecosystems, HR systems like Workday, you name it. Some of you may be considering building SaaS applications and want to include eSignature functionality in it yourself. If that's the case, DocuSign's APIs are equally relevant for you. Now, before we jump in deeper, here's some assumptions we'll make for the purpose of this session. If there's any topics on here that you're not familiar with, I encourage you to watch one of the previous sessions called Build Your First Integration. And so here are some of the topics we won't go over today. Authentication, we'll assume you're familiar with OAuth. and you have the basic understanding of how to send a single envelope. We'll also be using a tool like Postman for making REST API calls and demos. So we'll also assume that you're familiar with such a tool. Now, before we dive in, let's just do a quick refresh on eSignature terminology. You may have seen this in other sessions before, but just want to make sure you know. The fundamental unit inside DocuSign is an envelope. An envelope is the package that you send to a signer to sign. Your signers are called recipients. There are many types of recipients, such as signers, CCs, witnesses, many different types. And you can send an envelope to more than one person if you'd like. An envelope contains many different documents. It could be one, it could be many. And each of these documents have tabs on them. And a tab is a field that a signer needs to fill out, such as text fields or signature fields. If you're new to DocuSign, I highly encourage you to take a snapshot of this slide so that you can reference it. It's also available on our Developer Center. And so with that, let's dive in. So when you think about an end-to-end flow for integrating with DocuSign, we think of the lifecycle in 3 distinct phases. Starting with the left side is the upstream systems from DocuSign. DocuSign is used for many different scenarios. Let's take HR, for example. In that case, the upstream system is your HR system. This could be Greenhouse or Workday. But let's assume you built something in-house. Your recruiters and hiring managers are using this HR system to review applicants, set up interviews, fill in interview feedback, hopefully make a couple offers. Users are purely operating in the HR system. When the offer time comes around, the HR application can then utilize DocuSign's APIs to set up an eSignature flow. This gets into the middle part. DocuSign then handles everything from the signature process to sending notifications, reminders, authenticating the user, and collecting data and the signature itself. For each step of the way, as the document is making its way through the various approvers and candidates, your application will be able to get push notifications through webhooks. DocuSign Connect is our solution for that. Connect can notify your application on everything that happens in DocuSign, when someone signed, when someone declines, or when the envelope is finally completed. Then that allows your application to handle the downstream processes, including archiving the document safely, and perhaps triggering some of the candidates' onboarding processes, such as ordering hardware and provisioning user accounts. If you want to learn more about Connect, there's a session coming up on webhooks for inbound DocuSign transactions, which will also give an overview of our webhooks in general. So I encourage you to attend that. For this session, we'll mainly focus on the calling of the REST APIs in the middle part here. To start off, you'll need to think about how you want to send a document. In the previous HR example, we talked about how a manager or recruiter can use an HR application to send. But depending on your business needs, you can start in a variety of ways. The first, of course, is to use our first-party applications. This could be our web app, Android, iOS app, many of our other first-party apps like Salesforce. The second is to use one of our 350 available integrations built by our partners. These are readily available and don't require developer support. The third is to let your users continue to use your application, but your application is behind the scenes powered by DocuSign. The users don't see DocuSign UI, but instead see your application. Your application calls DocuSign when there is a need to start the eSignature process. The last is to embed DocuSign sending experience deeply into your application. This allows your apps to include eSignature sending experiences. Users would see the DocuSign UI embedded within your application and would be able to take advantage of everything that DocuSign has to offer. For the examples today, we'll focus on the last two, specifically the third option, back office integrations. Tomorrow's eSign 201, we'll talk a little bit more about embedded sending. So let's start with one of the most popular eSign features. When getting started with DocuSign, let's make DocuSign your very own. DocuSign has the ability to customize both the sending and signing experiences. You can create many brands and distribute it in flexible ways. Once you create a brand, you can select which is the default for your account. But then for specific users or groups or templates and documents that you want to send, you can choose to use a different brand. This gives you the flexibility to have slightly different brands depending on departments. For example, if you're a university, you may have a slightly different branding between the math and literature department. Branding isn't just limited for a couple colors though. For power users, we provide an XML resource file that can be used to modify all aspects of the application, from linked text to fonts, finer color control, you name it. It allows you to do things like direct the support link to your website instead of DocuSigns, further making DocuSign seamless within your application. So now let's show you a little demo of what this looks like. So this is Postman, and we're going to use this pretty frequently for the demos today. And so first, I have a general envelope. You're probably familiar with this if you attended one of the previous sessions. I'm going to minimize the document itself since it's just a very long base64. And essentially, I'm going to send out an envelope. And this is just going to be a basic envelope. So nothing's going to be happen that's too special here. We'll come and take a look at Helen's inbox. And you can see an envelope has arrived. When you click into it, you see the general blue color of DocuSign. So all this is very familiar theme, but I want to customize it a little bit. How do I do that? Well, let's start with the DocuSign environment. So you can see here, I'm in a sending experience in DocuSign. I've already customized the theme, but let's show you how that's exactly done. So going into the settings area, there's a space specifically for brands. And here you can see there's a signing and sending brands. Now I'm going to go and look at this signing brand that I've created. You can see that you can upload logos, you can change colors. And so I've already set this up. Now I want to use this in my envelope. How do I do that? Well, there's a brand ID associated with every single brand. Let's go back to the API sending example. This time when I send the envelope, it's going to be the exact same. And minimize the document again. And you can see that there's just an extra brand ID that's included. That's the brand that's previously referenced. So now, if I send again, and take a look at Helen's inbox here, you can see a second one has arrived, and this time is branded. This pattern is fairly straightforward for your customers to build into your integrations. But if you're an ISV looking to include DocuSign into your SaaS application, let's say it's a CRM integration, in this case, you'll have many different customers. And your SaaS offering may also have theming itself. So if you're familiar with Salesforce or Dynamic CRM, you'll know that both offer custom themes. DocuSign branding is a perfect way to implement even with these integrations because you can build and set brands programmatically. This allows your applications to seamlessly take into account DocuSign. Let's keep going. And so the next feature we'll talk about is templates. Templates is basically the bread and butter of many different use cases. Templates are an extremely flexible way to use DocuSign. Anytime you're reusing a document, a template can be used instead. While some use cases would call for the need of building every single envelope from scratch, many times things can be simplified. Once created, a template can be shared to specific groups of users. We can then enforce that only approved templates are used across the organization. This way, you decrease the risk of human error when sending out agreements. Templates can also be exported for power users to manage. This exports a JSON document, which can then be manipulated directly. It can also be imported and exported. This way, organizations can test and demo before migrating it into prod. The most powerful aspect of templates is probably the ability to mix and match. When creating an envelope, you can bring in multiple templates, which can then be merged together coherently. This way, for complex scenarios, such as bank account opening, you can pull in existing templates, merge them together without ever having to retag or manually merge. This drastically simplifies your sending logic and processes. Templates are also the foundation of many of our other features. So let's talk about one of these features that utilize templates. Bulk send. Bulk send is one of the most critical features of eSignature. By leveraging bulk send, organizations can decrease the amount of time it takes to send a standardized document to multiple recipients, reduce errors, and improve the user experience for both recipients and senders. The DocuSign eSignature bulk send functionality allows users to send one document to hundreds and thousands of recipients with ease. From the web application, all you have to do is prepare a bulk recipient CSV file, which with each row is a recipient. But we're here to talk about the API. And this is one of the most powerful APIs there are in DocuSign. When you're sending any high volume envelopes, for example, documents to all employees, bulk send has to be the way to go. This is a way to ensure that you don't cap out your API limits on your account as well. The ways that you can use bulk send are really limitless, but here's a few examples, use cases where they could be very useful. Class action lawsuits, employee policies, HR updates, W4 forms, you name it. If you ever find yourself sending out similar docs, it's a good idea to batch them together as well through bulk send. This will drastically help your organization scale. I also want to call out that one of the most powerful aspects of bulk send is that each row or recipient can be completely customized. You can pre-fill fields for each person differently. You can attach different custom metadata, and it's extremely flexible. Another very powerful solution we have is DocuSign Identify. This is a spectrum of options for organizations that need to identify signature signers beyond the standard practice of clicking an email. For example, if you have ever applied for a credit card or opened a bank account, chances are you've had to verify your identity in an extensive way. This process could involve many different steps, such as meeting someone in person, showing your driver's license, providing additional documentation, performing credit checks, etc. This rigorous process enables the sender to trust your signature. The Identify product family enables customers to choose among many different approaches. Here are some of the examples: SMS, phone call, KBA, ID verification. There's also solutions that are built by our third parties or DocuSign partners. You can also integrate your own custom-built workflows and solutions. This is extremely important depending on your use case. Signers are presented with additional steps to ensure that it's the person that it's supposed to be that's signing the document. Authenticating a user also decreases the risk of fraud and improves data privacy. All right, so let's hop into a demo and show all these things together. So the first thing I'll show is bulk send. Now, let's actually take a quick look at the template that's already existing, which we'll start with. So we have a template right here. I'll show you this quickly. It is an insider trading policy agreement. Now, I want to send this to all of my employees. I could do this one by one, or I could do a loop within the API. However, if you're sending to thousands or potentially even hundreds of thousands of employees, that's not a good way to go. Bulk send is your solution. So in order to get this set up, the first thing I'm going to do is call the bulk send and create a bulk send list. This list basically represents the CSV file in the web application that contains all the different recipients that you want to send to. You can reuse these lists over and over again, so you can have one list indicating all your employees. Once you've created this list, now I'm going to go and add the different people that I want, or the different recipients. Now, this is a basic example. You can see that essentially you have bulk send copies with the different recipients included, primarily their name and email. You'll also need the recipient ID, which can be found in the template. So here is an API call that fetches the template, the previous template that I just showed. And you can see that when you scroll to the recipients, there's a recipient ID that you can use. Now, I'm actually not going to use this specific call. As you can see, this is very basic, and it just contains name and email. But one thing to note is that some of these forms can be pretty complex, and you might want to pre-fill information for your employees instead of letting them manually fill it out themselves. So if I take another look again at this template, you can see that this insider trading policy actually has many different fields to fill out. Specifically, one of them is the employee number. So when creating this bulk send list, I want to make sure that I have the employee number. And you can see that I can include tabs very flexibly for each recipient here. So I'm going to go ahead and make this call, filling in the bulk send list. The next step is to simply send. All you need to do is provide the envelope or template ID. In this case, I already have the template ID. It can be found here. Now I'm going to go ahead and send. That's it. And you can use this to easily send to many, many different employees. You can see here I have two inboxes open. One is for Helen, one is for Johnny. And you can see both of them have now received the envelopes. If you want to check on statuses, you're also able to do this through our bulk batch send or our bulk status updates. And so here I can make a call using the previous bulk, which will show you that the batch size is 2 and that we've already sent to them both. Now, going through an experience here, if Helen goes and reviews the document, she's going to be able to come in here and drop right into the DocuSign signing experience. And you can see at the bottom, the employee number is filled. All she has to do now is sign. But let's not do this just quite yet. So the other thing is we want to make sure that each employee is actually who they say they are. So how do we actually go and do that? Well, that's where DocuSign Identify comes in. So first of all, we're going to delete the previous bulk list that we just created. And this time, I'm going to create a new bulk list. This time, I also want to add some authentication options. So I'm going to create a new bulk list here. And when adding recipients to the bulk list, you can see in addition to the previous fields that I've already had and pre-filling out the employee number, I also can configure the identification methods. Now, I can choose to do this for all employees, or I can choose to do it for some. And so in the second example here with Johnny, I'm not going to have it. This is an example of how bulk send is super flexible, but also that Identify can be used in any sort of workflow. So let's go ahead and create this list. And now let's send again. So now you can see Helen has received a new document. This time when she signs, she has to go through the SMS authentication flow that was defined earlier in the bulk send. Now, this is a real phone number, and so I have a text message that I'm going to receive. And I will now enter the code. And there we go, the signing flow. So that's a quick example of how we can put everything together that we just showed you, from template creation to using it as for bulk send, but then also to include Identify in your workflows. Now, as you're building your experiences, one of the key decisions also to make is what you want your signer experience to be. DocuSign includes a variety of possible signing experiences that you can pick and choose to optimize for your scenario. The first is remote signing. All this means is that once you send an envelope, DocuSign will fully handle the end-to-end completion of that envelope. Typically, signers will receive some type of notification, whether it's email or SMS, and then will be taken to DocuSign's website to sign. This is the simplest signing experience and the classic sign from email experience that I just showed you. Signing an offer letter is a perfect example of this. You typically get an offer in your email, you open it, takes you to DocuSign, you sign, and you're done. The second signing experience is in-person signing. Some use cases still want eSignature, but they want to be done in person or in office. And so a great example of this is opening a bank account. The third is self-service. There are many situations where a signer is the one to initiate a document. For example, schools tend to have forms available for students to fill out on housing, dropping courses, tuition assistance. Governments tend to have a lot of these as well. Over the past 2 years, DocuSign has supported many SBA loan initiatives where the business is the one starting the process to make a request. DocuSign supports this through a feature called Power Forms. Lastly, you may want to embed the signing experience in your application and handle the user experience and flow yourself. In this case, you may have an app or website that your signers use. Imagine an insurance app, for example. When your policy is up, the insurance app sends a push notification saying, hey, it's time to renew. And you may also get an email from the insurance company as well. DocuSign doesn't send the signer anything. But once you open the insurance app, then it presents to you a document ready to sign embedded in the app itself. This gives a seamless way to use DocuSign in your application. Depending on your use case, you can pick which solution best suits you. It's likely that everyone's experience is a little bit different. And many of you probably have already experienced remote signing or in-person signing in some shape or form in the past. So let's really focus on the second two, which is self-service and embedded signing. Let's start with Power Forms. Power Forms are a perfect way for a variety of signer-initiated processes. This includes signing activity waiver forms, which could be event registrations, NDAs, visitor lobby registrations. The key in all these different cases is that it's not a sender that's sending you a document. It's the signer who's arriving at a location or deciding to do something and initiating. This is probably the lowest barrier way to integrate DocuSign directly into your application. All you do is generate a link from DocuSign and place it somewhere on your website for users to click. Of course, you can also generate Power Forms programmatically if you needed to, but going through the UI and creating a link is the easiest way to go. So let's show you how that's done. So back in the demo environment that we were just in, let's go ahead and use the insider trading policy. So previously, you bulk send it to every single employee. But now let's say that you just want the employees to go fill it out themselves as part of an onboarding process, and you want to have a link. Well, that's fairly easy to do. All you do is come here to the template and create a Power Form. And that's it. So now this will give you a link that anyone can click on from your website to take into a signing experience and to start a form experience to start an envelope. Let's show you that quickly. So here, I just filled out the form with my name as the initiator of the envelope, the signer, and you get the exact same signing experience that you did before, except this time, it's the signer that's initiating. Now let's talk about embedded signing. This is also a deep area with a lot of possibilities. So here's some key tips on how to get embedded signing to work well with your application. Embedded signing can be included in your app in one of two ways, either iframed or done through a redirect to the URL. Both options will work. Iframing will allow you to build side-by-side experiences where you have the signing session in one end and your application displaying context in the wherever the other outside frame is. Due to a redirect, simply takes you to another page, which will then take you back to the application. Now, one thing to note is that embedded sessions are meant to be single use and links will expire very quickly. This is done on purpose so that applications don't generate a bunch of embedded links and then leave an insecure trail. It also ensures that a signer can't just take the URL and use that to have permanent access to the envelope. Remember that in an embedded signing case, DocuSign does not authenticate or validate the user. The user is not delivered an email from DocuSign. Instead, DocuSign relies on your application to verify the user. For example, your application may be delivering a link to your app, or the user is logged into your application. In these cases, only when the user is fully authenticated in your app, at that moment, should your app generate the embedded links, and DocuSign will allow access into the envelope. Do not generate an embedded link and send it to a signer through an email. That will not work. If you want to support that flow, send the email with a link to your application page that then makes the call to generate the embedded link when the user arrives and you have authenticated the user. This is super critical for maintaining the security and integrity of the signature. Once the signing session is complete, we offer a variety of ways to manage the post-signing experience. Be able to instruct our embedded pages to redirect to a completion page or some sort of a URL. There, we will pass through the URL params how the session went so that your application knows what to do when the signer finished signing or declined or other things. Now let's show you embedded signing in action. We have a sample application built already. I'm going to pretend to be an application or a customer of TGK Capital, and I'm going to apply for a mortgage. This is on TGK Capital's website, not DocuSign's. Again, I'm going to use Helen as the signer, and I'm logging into TGK Capital. As part of the mortgage application, I'm going to fill out my information and submit it. You can see this is actually still within the TGK Capital financial application, but you have DocuSign's application embedded in it. In fact, it's also themed and branded according to the website. This provides a seamless experience to embed DocuSign into any application. Let's also take a look at how the API for this works. So first is I'm just going to create an envelope using the brand ID, exactly as we stated earlier, with a document here. Now, in order to indicate that this envelope, you want this specific recipient to be an embedded signing experience, all you need to do is provide a client user ID. This will tell our application that you want to manage the rest of the flow. So I'm going to quickly show you Helen's inbox here. Let's clean it up. And then I'm going to send this envelope. You'll notice that Helen doesn't get anything because I've indicated that I want to handle this in the signing session through an embedded flow. So then the next step is to generate the embedded URL. Once you make this call with the relevant recipient information on the envelope, you're going to be able to generate a link, which again is one-time access and available for a short time. This allows your application then to immediately open this experience. Let's see what that looks like. And you can see you have the branded experience ready to go. Helen can then go and finish the signing process here. And you'll notice something interesting. When you finish, it takes you back to TGK Capital. It didn't just take to a generic DocuSign site. And in the URL, it also appends what exactly happened. In this case, it's signing complete. This is how your application can manage to use this embedded within your application, either through iframe or through a redirect. Now, you'll notice that the way that you set this is to set a return URL right from in the request itself. This tells the application to go to this specific page once the embedded session is completed. Okay, and that's it for the session today. Tomorrow, there's an eSign 201 that continues the conversation with more advanced features where we talk about embedded sending among more and together with other popular eSignature capabilities. Now, I do want to say that if you have any product or feedback to share, definitely want to have a call out to the feedback@DocuSign.com. This is a new feedback portal. So if you're an existing customer and you have different asks on our system, definitely go to this site and vote and input your feedback. And with that, we're going to hop right into Q&A. Okay, so I'm going to read out some of the questions here, and I'll provide answers to them. So someone asked, we have almost 50 templates, and we want to print out names, date created, but I don't see a way to print out that information. Is this possible? So not quite sure what the context of printing out here is. This might require a little bit of a context. If you can also just enter the question again, rephrase. Is this about physically printing or is this something else? Let me know. Someone asked, can you add recipients to an envelope later? Absolutely. And so once you create an envelope and it is in flight, modifying that envelope is through a process called correct. And you can definitely do that, but know that there are some restrictions to correct so that you can't just modify the agreement after people have signed. And so the answer is yes, but with some restrictions. Another answer is, what is the REST API limit? If we reach the limit, what could we do? Can we increase the limit? So that's a great question. As you're building integrations, you'll all find out that the different environments, you are subject to a specific limit on your account. That default limit is 1,000 API calls per hour. However, we are able to scale that up for you as long as you are using DocuSign APIs in an effective and efficient manner. In fact, tomorrow in the eSign 201 session, we'll talk a little bit about the tools that we make available to you to help you manage your API limits. So continuing the questions, we've had, here's the next one. We've had Power Forms that have stopped working after we've made changes to the underlying template. Should we regenerate the Power Form if we made any changes to the template? So yes, if you are having an issue because of modifications to the template, definitely a good idea to recreate the Power Form and at least ensure that the new submissions and all the data is consistent. Next question. Can I generate another embedded URL for the envelopes I generated earlier if the first embedded URL expired? So the answer is yes. In fact, you can generate embedded URLs as often as you want, or it more makes sense for your application. And so if it did expire, yeah, absolutely. Again, the best practice is really that the second the user is about to enter the signing session, that's when you generate the URL and then forward or embed that into your application. So someone clarified the earlier question around templates, which was whether it was possible to physically print out a template list, either to a printer or a text file. So just let me take a quick look at the original question again. I see. So you're looking to get an export of all the templates. So I think the easiest way to do that is actually through the API. You can make an API call to fetch all the templates on your account. That's actually probably the best way to do it. After that, you can choose what you want to do with that list, whether it's printing out or exporting to some sort of application. Okay, next question. Is there any way to view multiple documents in the envelope from within the recipient view? So I think this might need to go back to the eSign terminology we talked a little bit about. So every envelope, you can generate a recipient view, an embedded view. And you should do it one at a time. Now, that specific envelope can contain many, many different documents. And so the answer is yes, you can definitely generate an embedded view for all your documents. And you can see multiple documents, but it should be one envelope at a time. Okay. Next question. Can a recipient be added to an envelope or document later? For example, a classroom social contract to which a new student needs to add their signature. Would this be a use case for bulk send? So I think a little bit similar to the earlier question. Yes, you can definitely add a recipient to an envelope later, at a later point. And this is through the process of correct. Okay. Let's see if there are any other questions. Okay, great. I think we're done. So with that, I think we have about 30 seconds left. Thank you so much for attending this session. Again, we'll have a continuation tomorrow. I look forward to seeing you guys there. Thank you all.